Only Supreme Court justices refuse to allow their conduct to be investigated or reviewed. My bill would fix that. Here's an example of the no investigations problem. The key fact to determine whether Justice Thomas was bound by law to recuse himself from the first January 6th committee case was what he knew about his wife's insurrection activities and when he knew it. On that fact, the lawfulness of his initial recusal decision turns. Yet Thomas has never been officially asked that question. It's a cover-up in plain view.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
There's receipts, then there's this. A CVS-level forestry's worth scroll of a receipt that Democrat Sheldon Whitehouse brought to the hearing on SCOTUS ethics. From blasting Scalia as a sleeper agent to holding Clarence Thomas to account for his wife's role in the January 6th insurrection, Sheldon Whitehouse came equipped.
Thank you, Chairman. We are here today because the Supreme Court is playing out of bounds of the ethics rules for federal judges. Justices read the ethics rules in unique and eccentric ways, and when they're caught out of bounds, they refuse to allow any investigation of the facts. The personal hospitality problems I've been pursuing began with Justice Scalia, who took more than 7 dozen undisclosed hunting vacations. Most people know of 2. The one where he was on the Air Force Two manifest with Dick Cheney, and the one where he died. There were 70 plus more. It was systematized. Some intermediary would ask the owner of an expensive resort, often a commercial property, to extend to Scalia a personal invitation to the resort. Even where the owner was someone he'd never met, Scalia treated as personal hospitality because of the personal invitation and failed to disclose the vacations. When I challenged the court about this practice, Exhibit 1, I got a blow-off letter. Exhibit 2. Basically, nothing to see here.
And then, after getting warmed up, the exhibits came out, as he outlined point by point the problematic nature of Justice Thomas's relationship with right-wing billionaires. And when I tell you his surgical takedown is worth a watch, I mean it's worth watching every single second.
Exhibit 6. I have no evidence that any federal judge outside the Supreme Court ever used the personal invitation trick, and the Judicial Conference, made up of other judges, firmly shut it down. Regular judges would be loath to use that trick because a complaint about it would go into a proper process and would be investigated and measured against the law and the ethics code, and a conclusion would be reached, and that conclusion could be embarrassing. Only Supreme Court justices refuse to allow their conduct to be investigated or reviewed. My bill would fix that. Here's an example of the no investigations problem. The key fact to determine whether Justice Thomas was bound by law to recuse himself from the first January 6th committee case was what he knew about his wife's insurrection activities and when he knew it. On that fact, the lawfulness of his initial recusal decision turns. Yet Thomas has never been officially asked that question. It's a cover-up in plain view. The Supreme Court alone among federal courts is okay with that. My bill would fix that. Which brings us to Justice Thomas's recent non-disclosure of supposed personal hospitality from a right-wing billionaire and its problems. First problem, private jet travel is not in the personal hospitality exemption, which is limited to food, lodging, and entertainment. Exhibit 7. Some textualist, by the way. Second problem, Thomas said it was okay because he'd asked colleagues. But that Financial Disclosure Committee, it's there to ask about financial disclosure. Setting aside that its name should give a clue, Thomas knew the committee existed because concerns about his yacht and jet travel gifts from this billionaire were referred there in 2011, after some of these gifts were first revealed in this New York Times story, Exhibit 9. Third problem, there's no legal way not to disclose the property acquisition in Georgia. Fourth problem, some of this personal hospitality involved people dedicated to turning the court into a tool for right-wing billionaires, namely Leonard Leo. This guy doesn't have business before the court, his business is the court. This disclosure mess has again been referred to the Financial Disclosure Committee, which raises the question of the previous referral to that same committee of the same billionaire's gifts to Thomas of yacht and jet travel. The rules seem to require the committee to report its findings to the Judicial Conference. The records of the Judicial Conference are public, and the records of the Judicial Conference contain no mention of any such report. So what became of the 2011 referral? Did anyone intervene? Is the committee still considering the 2011 referral more than a decade later? There is much yet to learn, which is why last week I sent a letter to the courts asking for further answers. Exhibit 10. 3 things are needed to fix all this: better enforcement, better recusal rules, and better disclosures. My bill would do all 3. I thank Chairman Durbin for this joint hearing and look forward to getting to the bottom of this mess. Until there is an honest ethics process at the Supreme Court, these messes will continue. The court has conclusively proven that it cannot police itself. Nemo judex in sua causa. I ask unanimous consent that my exhibits be made part of the record.
Now, I mean, come on, Senator. Is this really necessary, though? I mean, sure, Clarence Thomas failed to disclose 2 decades worth of luxury trips and private jet travel, and the mere fact that right-wing billionaire Harlan Crow bought Thomas's mother a house.
The 9 individuals whose literal job it is to make rules that every single American must abide by. Those same people have decided, apparently, that they don't need any rules for themselves. Earlier today, Senate Democrats at a Judiciary Committee hearing made the case for Supreme Court ethics reform, calling for a code of conduct that justices must follow, which is basically just the bare minimum. Committee chair and Senator Dick Durbin even pointed out that right now, ethical standards for Supreme Court justices are actually lower than they are for local city council members.
The court should have a code of conduct with clear and enforceable rules, so both justices and the American people know when conduct crosses the line. The highest court in the land should not have the lowest ethical standards.
Chief Justice John Roberts snubbed the invite from Senator Durbin last week, offering instead a statement signed by all the justices in which they reaffirm and restate foundational ethics principles and practices to which they abide. Seriously. But let's just take a look at where those principles and practices have got us thus far, shall we? ProPublica revealed that Justice Clarence Thomas has failed to disclose luxury trips and private jet travel over the course of 2 decades, gifted to him by wealthy Republican donor and Nazi paraphernalia collector Harlan Crow. He also conveniently failed to disclose that Crow even bought Thomas's mother a house.
But is that really unethical? I mean, that happens every day, right?
The highest court in the land should not have the lowest ethical standards.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.